I'd like to call the Public Works Committee to order tonight, September 12th.
Council Vice President Vargas, Councilwoman Horoyan, Councilman Ferry,
Present.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Here.
Councilman Donegan, Councilman Campiano,
Present.
Councilman Wall,
Here.
Council President Marino's not here.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the minutes from August 15th, 2024, regular meetings?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, committee matters,
It's just a vote. We have to vote on it.
Councilwoman Horoyan.
Yes.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
yes.
Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Councilman Wall.
Yes.
Committee business matters carried over.
No, you can do that.
Want to take the agenda out of order, we could deal with the other things and then we can go back to that
Okay.
once the president arrives.
I'll make a motion to take the docket out of order.
Second that motion. Any discussion?
And can we please take a vote?
Councilwoman Horoyan,
You have a second?
Councilwoman Horoyan.
Yes.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli.
Yes.
Councilman Campiano.
Yes.
Councilman Wall.
Yes. Yep, your microphone's off. Yeah, I'm sorry. You might want to push it a little closer.
Is there any public comment tonight?
Ask for Zoom.
Is there anybody on Zoom?
A reminder, please use the raise hand function. I am seeing no public comment.
Point of information, Councilwoman Horan just asked to close public comment.
Could we please close public comment?
Can't hear you.
New matters before the committee tonight. Petition of Narragansett Electric.
Motion to approve.
Second.
You. Any discussion on this? Could I please have a vote?
Councilwoman Horoyan,
Yes.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Councilman Wall.
Yes.
Council communications. Going to go back to the petition of Narragansett Electric and Verizon New England for the new pole to hang new equipment on Country Meadow Lane, also known as Country Lane.
Motion to approve. Second.
Any discussion on this? Councilwoman Renzulli?
Thank you, Councilwoman Horan. I am just looking for a reminder perhaps from the clerk of why this was continued. Do we know why this was continued, or from the administration why it was continued?
I believe Director Matus wasn't here at the last meeting, and I don't believe he had a chance to look at them before.
Correct, yeah, I just didn't have a chance to take a look at it before the last meeting.
Okay, do you have any concern about this, Director?
Nope, I went out there today, just to hang new equipment on a pole.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Any more discussion on it? Could we please take a vote?
Councilwoman Horoyan,
Yes.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mazzulli.
Yes.
Councilman Campiano.
Yes.
Councilman Wall,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Just gonna abstain from that because I just walked in. Thanks.
Councilman Wall?
I asked the clerk to put this on the Public Works agenda again, because last time, and just to refresh people's memory, this had to do with the flood problems, ongoing flood problems from March right up to the current date, in the Poplar Circle and Poplar Drive area. At that time, only Executive Director Moretti was here because Director Matus was on vacation. I think we've had time. I'd like to hear from the Public Works Director on what is being done, because this is an ongoing issue. There have been people who reached out. They reach out to me. I know at least they told me they've reached out to your office. I've sent a new number of emails that have gone, and I mentioned before, with no response, and it's concerning on several levels. So first, I'd like to know what is being done for this issue, because not only myself, but the mayor's going out and talked to people as well after I sent out a letter, and people have, when an inch of water comes down, people have water covering all the way up and almost to the foundation of their homes. So I'd just like to hear, because it's an ongoing issue and people deserve an answer.
Yep, it is certainly an issue over there. What I was just thinking as you were speaking, the magnitude of the issue is comparable to the magnitude of the solution. This is not something that can be solved in a week or 2 weeks or a month or 2 months. This is something that needs to be studied, vetted, engineered, permitted, constructed. This is a long-term solution to solve the problem over there. Excuse me, to mitigate the problem over there. We know of the problem. We have started going after grants with this location in mind. We've gone after 5 grants so far. The one that this particular location falls within is the Oscar grant. We have not heard back whether or not we've received that grant, but there is plans out there to start to address the situation.
Just to follow up, so the Oscar grant, and maybe some of you are familiar with the Oscar grant. I'm not familiar with it, and no one in the Poplar Circle has heard anything about this area, because I've been through it 3 times, and I think what kind of concerns me, I know it's a big issue, is the lack of response. And if I'm hearing people in that area, and I don't wish to be combative, I don't wish to sound angered or anything like that, but if they're not getting an answer, they send emails, texts, call their councilman, and I can't get an answer after lengthy, detailed emails with pictures, right? No one can respond at all. So the Oscar grant, when did you guys apply for it?
July, I believe we submitted that.
My first notification to your office was in March. It would have been nice, and I know Director Moretti does not like you to contact us directly. It would have been nice if some message, however it may be, text, email, memorandum, got to me. So, and perhaps, I mean, this is March. Today, we're in September. We've had a little time to study. And we've had a little downtime because we've had some dry days, dry months. You know the wet weather is coming. It's going to get worse. I think now's the time to start studying it and really get under it. July was a little late. We had storms all the way from December all the way to the early spring. So it's a concern. And here's the thing, it's ongoing. When the rain starts coming again, these people are going to have their backyards, their basements flooded again.
Yeah, just to speak on the schedule of things, the mitigation effort here is going to be, requires grant funding assistance. The Oscar grant was due in July, and that's why we submitted it in July. I need a funding assistance to tackle projects of this magnitude. So our plan is revolving around the grant schedule, if that makes sense. So we didn't get your information in March and say we're not going to do anything until July. We geared up to prepare to apply for a grant that we thought would accept the work to mitigate this problem, which was due in July. I hope I'm not confusing you.
And you're not confusing me. No, it's not, that's not the look of confusion. It's the look, but there could have been some correspondence sent to me. And that's, I'll tell you what, that's the part, because it would have been nice when I talked to these people again, that I didn't hear. I called them once. I emailed them two times. I sent a letter to the mayor. I would have liked some correspondence, and I know there's got to be a way where you can correspond with us with an issue through Director Meridia or however it's done. So that's what the look was. It was kind of like, why am I hearing about it now instead of in March, April, June, July, August? That's the concern. And I don't wish to sound combative, but I think we got to do better. And that's my message. And I won't take the whole committee's time, but I think we have to do better because this issue is ongoing, as you said, and it's a big one.
Councilwoman Zuli?
Thank you, Councilwoman Horan. Director, do you think that, to Councilman Wall's point, do you think that perhaps some kind of memo, blurb, summary of what you just said could be presented to Director Moretti, who could maybe send it out to us through the communications director so that we could share with constituents, or perhaps you could, or any of us could speak with the mayor to see if he can send out a letter to that area, just so that the people know that it's being worked on and that it is a long-term effort, and not to expect that next month it's going to be taken care of, but to just know that we're all working on it, because obviously applying for the grant takes work. You're doing the work. I want to see you get, credit for doing the work as well, because when work is getting done and no one knows, then I think people assume that it's not getting done.
I think that's a great idea. I
Okay.
think we would want to wait until we do get the approval for the grant instead of putting out a letter saying we're hopeful to get this, and then, worst case scenario, if we don't, I would
Okay.
hate to have the false. false
I
positive out
totally
there.
understand. To just maybe say it in a different way, not maybe mention the Oscar grant, but just say we are working on this, but we do not currently have funding, and we are, looking for grant money in order to do these infrastructure improvements. And that's not really, the communications person can figure out the proper verbiage for that, but I think that would kind of settle everyone, especially during this time when we're all walking around, and it's a good time for people to tell us what the problems are. I want them to know that the problems are being worked on, being solved, but they're not going to be solved overnight.
I think it sounds like a good idea.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to go back to Council President Marino.
Thank you. Actually, if I could, through the chair, address Councilman Wall's subject matter for a minute. Thank you. I just had a question, not knowing the specifics of that area, and it's easy sometimes to overlook the obvious, so it's worth mentioning. Is there any particular drain or, a culvert or something in that area that they are experiencing the flooding?
No, we've looked at this area in this year in June, and we also did some CCTV work in 2022. There is no silver bullet out there that's glaring as the cause of the issue. Everything is structural out there. So we believe the issue is just the capacity of the pipes.
Okay. But if I understood you correct, there is an actual drain or culvert in the area, but you're just saying that's not the cause of the problem?
I'm sorry, I think I misunderstood you. There is culverts, there is open swales and closed drainage systems in the area. Those have been inspected. There are no structural concerns with them.
And when were they last cleared and cleaned out of debris?
June of this year.
Okay. I don't know if that's helpful to you, Councilman Wall, that maybe info you already knew, just in terms of when the residents were complaining of the flooding issue.
Just, I think sometime around the June, that date, after that, but it was definitely after, I sent a picture of what I believed was the drain we speak of in back of Poplar Drive. And some of the clogged areas that in the intake, I don't know the inside how it looked, I can't get in there. And I think just in August or late August, I took the mayor back in that same yard and we looked at it and it looked clogged from the untrained eye. If you tell me you guys cleared it out, I'm not sure how you do it. I'm not an engineer. I don't profess to be, but there was debris all inside, all around the front where the intake of whatever water would come in. All right, there was debris there, and when we returned, and if you don't take my word for it, ask Mayor Hopkins as well. We saw the same thing. If this is keeping the water from going in, I think we need to go on a more frequent basis. I'm not sure. I don't profess to know that. But what I would follow up, and if it's okay with the council president, I would like this to be on the agenda again. I personally, because I have spoke to those people, I would like to have updates. So if you've applied for the grant, I want to know when in the grant. I want to know when you follow up. I want to know how much money. I'd like to know, because this is a pretty serious issue, and I believe they have a right to know. I think going forward, we're just going to I'm not pressing it loud enough. I don't think you can hear me. I would just like those regular updates, even if it's small and it's short, just so we know what's going on.
That's fair.
Council President, sorry.
Sorry, I always say, as long as I know who I am. Thanks. And through the chair, Councilwoman Haroyan, and the clerk, Councilman Wall, I think wants this to stay on Public Works. Is that right?
Would definitely like you to continue leaving this issue on
Okay.
Public Works. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. This evening I have two continued matters from previous, and I will mention the bridge and culvert inspection topic. If there's something from you, Director Mateus, that you want to update us on, that would be great.
Yep, all four reports of the 14, I'm sorry, all the 14 reports of the bridges and culverts have been finalized, and the asset management report was submitted last week in a draft form. Public Works is reviewing that right now, getting comments back to the consultant, and then that document should be finalized. I believe Director Moretti mentioned last month. Of course, anyone on the council is welcome to stop in Public Works and review the documents should you want to. Feel free.
Thank you. And then the other issue that we had was the flooding events from September to current, as is on the agenda. That's, as I've stated in previous meetings, that is on there pretty much as a catch-all in the event that we have a storm in the interim, and this topic is pertinent. So if there's anything too that the administration wants to update us on in that category.
Yeah, the one thing that stood out to me with this item was the recent news of the NRCS, $48.5 million for flood prevention between Cranston and Johnston. There's more to come on that. City officials will be meeting shortly with the state NRCS to come up with an action plan on that. That's pretty much all that I know at this point, but I think that that's good information to share with the council.
Okay. And that deals with just the Pecasset River, is that correct?
That's correct, yep.
Okay. And is that funding, that 40-something million, is that being shared with Johnston, or is that 40-something million just for Cranston?
It's between the two municipalities.
Okay. Do you know roughly what percentage of property of land, like Cranston versus Johnson? Is it like a 50-50, a 3/4 split?
I haven't heard a number in about a year, so I don't want to give misinformation, so I'll just say I don't. You know.
Okay. And the other question I had along those lines is, does it involve commercial properties or is it going to be exclusively just residential properties?
Again, from my conversations about a year ago, commercial properties are included. Based on the article that's in the Cranston Herald, they're looking at 134 structures to be demolished and over 100 properties acquired.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, and Council Communications, Council Vice President Vargas, and I'd like to turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you. I want to say, Councilwoman, you did a great job. All right, thank you for that. All right, good evening, colleagues. So I have two items on here. One is a commercial playground, commercial street playground. Just wanted to get a little bit of update. Director, good evening. I'm not sure if you have any update at all on behalf of the administration on the blacktop. I got a couple of calls, and as I was door knocking, they need some sealant on the basketball blacktop. The mulch needs, I think, a little bit of mulch. I know we're going into the fall, but there's still a lot of families that will be bringing their kids there. And I guess there's some, there's like a broken toy, and I didn't get a chance to go by to take the actual picture, but I didn't know if there's any way that whether it's through you or someone else, right? Someone from the administration can possibly swing by. But because this was on the docket, I don't know if you have any update on that.
I do not have any update on the status of the commercial playground. I'm filling in for Director Tisaglia today. He just had surgery on his shoulder and he's been out of work for a couple weeks because of that. I'm just here taking notes to relay to him. I'm writing down everything you're saying, and we will certainly go out there and take a look at it and address the deeds that you're highlighting.
Thank you.
As
Appreciate that. The other one was the Sanders graffiti. I did reach out to actually Director Tisaglia today. He told me that he would probably be providing either you, whomever was here on his behalf today, but the graffiti on the sign to be removed. That's my ask. There's graffiti right on Sanders playground where it says, actually, the actual sign itself. Family, just folks in the area. I just want to make sure that that graffiti can be removed. It's not a very pleasant sign with
That's
graffiti
no
all over
problem.
it.
We'll go take a look at that.
That was all that I have. All right, great.
Did you wish to have those removed from the agenda or?
Yeah, I think we can have them removed, and I can always bring it up and follow up. Or if you, Director, if you don't mind reaching out and let me know what the status at, going back to the first item, the commercial playground, just blacktop. It's just some grass.
I'll make sure someone
Yeah,
gets in
just to
touch
get
with
an
you
update.
with an update on these items.
That was all. All right. Yeah, Rosalba, through the clerk, yes, we can remove that. That's fine. All right. Great, thank you. If there's no further discussion at all.
We have to do this page.
Oh, sorry about that.
At the bottom of this page. Whitewood Drive, poll request.
Motion to adjourn that. There a second? Any discussion? See none? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, I have it. Meeting adjourned. All right, we're gonna start now the ordinance committee meeting. Is everybody ready to go? All right, perfect. Good evening, welcome to the ordinance committee meeting. It is Thursday, September 2024. Clerk, can you please take a roll call?
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes. Present, sorry.
Councilman Wall,
Here.
Councilman Ferry,
Present.
Councilwoman Mazzulli,
Here,
Councilwoman Haroyan,
Present.
Councilman Donegan, Councilman Campiano,
Present.
Council President Marino.
Present.
Thank you. Next order of business, the approval of,
So moved.
any discussion? Seeing none, the clerk can please take the roll.
Council,
Yes.
Councilman Wall,
Yes.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mazzulli.
yes.
Councilwoman Haroyan,
Yes.
Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes.
Right. Next, item up, it's the committee business matters carried over. That is 5-24-03. Ordinance and amendment of chapter 5.40 of the city of Cranston, 2005, entitled Hawkers and Peddlers, generally section 5.40.140, sponsored by Council President Marino, Councilman Wall, and Ferry. This was continue a few times. And is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Oh, actually, you know what? Let's want to withdraw that motion, and I'll actually just, turn that over
Withdraw
to the
that.
Council President. Great, thank you, Councilman Wall, Council President Marino.
Thank you. This evening, thanks to input from the solicitor, we've got some amendments to this ordinance this evening before we would like to have an additional motion. So I would like to make a motion to amend.
You need a second?
Well, I gotta.
Has
it's
to
gonna
say the
be a long
motion
one.
first, what the amendment is.
All right, so first, as part of this, it's going to be a motion to amend line 51 will be stricken. Line 57 and 58 will be stricken. Line 70 will be amended so that it reads, after the word person, should be who has been convicted or pled nolo contendere and received a sentence for a crime of violence, comma, fraud, comma, theft, comma, deceit, or any other crime of moral turpitude, period. And don't worry, Rosalba, I'll give it to you later. I'll give it to you written later. All right, yep. Line 74, strike beginning with the sentence if. Strike all of line 75, line 76, into line 77, with the end of the sentence where it ends permit period. That will be stricken. Then we will go to line 121. And that will be amended so that it reads conviction of any crime or plea of nolo contendere with a sentence. For a crime of violence, comma, fraud, comma, theft, comma, deceit, or any other crime of moral turpitude, period. Line 127, we will remove ad hoc committee and instead insert safety Services and Licenses Committee. And that will do it. Yep, okay.
Application. So we're gonna remove ad hoc committee of the city council and replace it with safety services and licenses committee,
Committee. That's fine.
right?
Okay, yep.
What's that?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's repetitive. I mean, I
okay, so just so we're clear, line 127 will read the removal as indicated, but it will say Safety Services Committee and also remove of the city council from that sentence. Safety Services and Licensing Committee is all it's gonna read, okay? Period.
All right, there's a motion
There's a motion by the
by the council
president.
president. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, discussion? Just a quick question to the council president. We're leaving that any appeal still has to go before the full council, not the committee, correct?
Correct.
Yep, to the sponsor. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Councilman, Wall.
Well, I am certainly, pleased at the amendments that, the council president and the solicitor put in. It keeps the main objective of, I believe, the ordinance intact. Those of you remember this, it came to me, my desk a number of months ago when an older person in my ward told me about certain instances where door-to-door salesmen, be it whatever they were selling, would come knocking several times, early in the morning, late at night, no identification. And some of these residents are alone, all alone in their house, and they felt like their safety was somewhat in jeopardy. It's quite understandable. Looking at this ordinance, I'm pleased with it. I am pleased that it allows those people who need to make a living, who are door-to-door salesmen or solicitors, it allows them to make a living, do what they have to do, but it also provides a measure of security for our residents who are alone. Identification is necessary. There are hours set. They have to register with the city. I think this is definitely a step in the right direction. I'm certainly going to be in favor of this ordinance this evening.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Councilmember Paplaskas.
Thank you, Council Vice President. Just have a question on the fee of $200. Was there a reasoning behind that amount that was picked, of 200? I guess my question is to any of the sponsors.
It was similar to what other cities and towns I saw were charging. And so, there's going to be some costs incurred with this, and it's within, I believe, our permitted allowance of what we can charge.
Okay, I only raised that because there was an issue, I don't know, 8 years ago-ish. Attorney Videcchia might remember where we were charging a fee for a permit, and we got taken to court and the fee was too high. So it kind of has to equal kind of what it cost us to do the background check, make the permit, that sort of thing. And I'm not saying 200 is not reasonable. I think it is. I just wanted to ask that question. Thank you.
Well, I think you hit it on the head. There's no bright line rule as to what's reasonable versus unreasonable. The state, as you know, recently enacted a similar solicitation law that applied specifically to solar sales. And it's pretty comprehensive. What it says about fees, just by way of comparison, is that it essentially leaves the application and the licensing fee up to the Department of Business Regulation. I don't know if the DBR has established a licensing fee and how much that is, because that would have offered some guidance perhaps, but the statute itself does not contain that. It's really it's a factual question, whether or not it's reasonable or unreasonable. I personally don't feel that that's 200 is unreasonable. It's in the discretion of this committee, obviously, if you wanted to make it 150, 175. just to keep it below 200, I think that would be reasonable, but it's really up to the committee. If it was 500, we might be having a different discussion. I don't think that in this day and age that 200 is excessive.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Manzulli?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'm not sure if this is for Attorney Verdecchia or for a sponsor, but when we removed on line 57, the name of the communities in Rhode Island or any other state in which the applicant has worked as a solicitor or canvasser in the past 3 years, we did remove that, correct? Okay, so going further down between 65, line 65 and 69, where it discusses the police obtaining that application from the city clerk, it says that the chief of police, to ensure the public health, safety, and welfare, the chief of police or his designate shall cause an investigation to be made of the information provided therein. He shall use any information available from any cities or towns in Rhode Island or any other state where the applicant has canvassed or solicited within the past 3 years. So I'm not sure if we have to take it off there too, or because they're not including it anymore.
Well, I don't want to speak for, obviously, for the council president, just I'm speaking what I relate to her. In my opinion, I thought that the safeguard here, if you will, was the fact that in lines 65, really all the way through 80, provide the mechanism to do background checks and a thorough investigation of these people. I thought that by including line 51, that by explicitly requiring that could be a red flag. I think it's adequately covered. And I suggested that to President Marino, again, just as a suggestion, but I felt that it was superfluous. I thought it was adequately covered. Why put out something that might be a red flag for someone who wants to challenge this?
Okay,
That was the
so they
reasoning
can
behind it.
find that they can use that information available from the background check itself. Is that what it's trying to say?
Absolutely. A background check includes, if
Includes
done
your-
properly,
We'll include your
includes
employment
everything, but
information.
requiring someone as a condition before you're going to
Okay.
issue a permit might be
Might
problematic.
Okay, that's what I was asking. And other question, solicitor, is just, when this is, note. When we are talking about the conviction of any crime or misdemeanor and crime of violence, fraud, deceit, et cetera, or plea of nolo contendere, what is there, and this may not be possible, but if someone applies for one of these, is not convicted of that, but is in the middle of, has been charged with any of those things, is there a mechanism if they become convicted and they have a permit for us to then take it?
I believe, and Madam President can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's provided for. There's a mechanism that a revocation proceeding could begin. And then we go into, they appear before safety services, almost like a show cause type thing. We would have the power to revoke if that were the case. They could appeal and go through the process. But that's a good point. But when someone's charged,
I know that we can't-
that's
I get we
not
can't
enough.
legally do that, but I'm
We
saying
can't,
if,
right. If they become convicted, there's the mechanism that's contained in the ordinance will allow for revocation, and they have their rights to appeal.
okay, I think, I might not be expressing my question properly, even if they're not, in the process already, someone receives the license and then they get convicted, I don't know if I missed it. How are we supposed to know unless somebody, like, no one's self-reporting perhaps, I don't know if someone else, how do we know that didn't occur? Is there something like that runs every year, 6 months, whatever, where these names are run
Well,
again?
That is, that comes down again to an enforcement type of issue. And I don't want to burden the police and suggest that they're supposed to do this every 6 months. or anything like that. But, as you know, we have people who have all kinds of licenses in the city, and we don't have the resources apparently to do checks on them every month and every 6 months. So I'm not quite sure how to answer that. That would be ideal if we could just do spot checks every 6 months or whatever. But practically speaking, I think unless it's brought to our attention, or the police discover it.
So-
Lacking that, I don't know how to answer that. I don't know that there is a way that we would know.
Okay. I don't know if the sponsors or Madam President's a lawyer. I don't know if in any other city or town they have a mechanism to do that. Obviously, I'm just throwing it out there that someone, and this is already occurring, that we have to be kind of reactive instead of proactive for that, I guess, unless there's a.
We
But
can,
practically speaking, though, I mean, it's a little unrealistic to expect that of any city or town, because like I said, there's thousands of licenses out there, and how can you monitor every person, what they're doing? It's almost an impossible task.
Council President Marino.
Thank you. Just to remind everyone, though, these permits are only valid for a year, so it will come up anyway. And I'm sure Solicitor Verdecchia, you can attest to this. For example, Councilwoman Renzulli, if someone has a charge, it's gonna come up soon enough for us. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Council President.
Councilmember Ferry.
Yes, when Councilman Paplaskas brought up the fee of $200, I caught something that I didn't catch the last time I went through this. If a company, let's say Dan Wall Solar Company, has 3 employees, do they just pay the $200 once, or do they have to pay it for all 3 employees? I didn't catch that last time.
Madam President, feel free to jump in, but I do notice that each employee in a company is required to have a permit, a card. I believe it's only $25 for each additional license, which is contained in lines 82 through 85. So it looks like the initial fee is 200. If you've got 10
Okay.
employees, it'll be another 250.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. So it'd be $250 if they had 3. Okay, all right, that's
No,
fine.
if they have, it's only $25
Yeah.
for each license. So if they got 3 employees, it would be another $75.
I
the way
didn't want it to be 600. I didn't think it
No.
would be fair if it was 200 every time they had it, but thank you for catching that. I'm sorry.
Is there, Councilwoman, do you have another question? Councilman Campobian.
Thank you. I know there's going to be a cost to implement this to the sponsors. Was there a fiscal note tied to this?
First of all, we're only doing the motion to amend right now, and once the motion to amend, then we'll get into the ordinance itself. So I don't want to get ahead of it, but I'm going to address that then. Thanks.
Right. Is there any other further discussion on the amendment? No? Okay. There's no further discussion. Through the clerk, we can take the roll call on the amendment.
Council Vice
There's
President
no-
Vargas.
There was a second, I'm sorry.
I thought there
May
was
have
a
missed
second.
it. There was a second, okay.
Councilman Nawal, the second. Okay. Better to
Council
say
Vice
that.
President Vargas,
Yes.
Councilman Wall,
Yes.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Horoyan. Yes. Council Campiano.
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes.
Okay, great. Now we have any discussion on the action, any further discussion on the
We need a motion to approve.
motion to
Second.
approve? Any discussion? Council President Marino.
Thank you. The issue of a fiscal note. After this evening, if this passes out of committee, then I would like to have the finance director through the administration prepare a fiscal note and commence discussion with the police department, with the colonel, as to the implementation of this. Before this evening, there was no point in wasting anybody's valuable time in doing that. But after this evening and between the next council meeting, those efforts will be made.
And Madam Chair, if I may suggest,
Sure.
that's a great idea. I would just offer the suggestion that the request for a fiscal note be done by way of motion. And so
Not-
it's a formal request by motion.
Right, so we could put a motion in for that.
Motion to request a fiscal note tied to this ordinance, let's see, where's the call letters? Said, ordinance of the city council amendment, chapters 5.40 of the city of Cranston entitled Hawkers and Peddlers generally, section 5.40.140, soliciting houses.
Second.
Right, any discussion? Let's take a roll call on that.
Council Vice President Vargas.
Yes.
Councilman Wall. Councilman Ferry.
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli.
Yes.
Councilwoman Horoyan.
Yes.
Councilman Campiano.
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. That passed. Now we have any other discussion on the full item? Councilmember Campo, yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. I guess it might be for the solicitor. If we find that the cost is higher or lower than expected, can that fee be adjusted?
Within reason, yes. If, and I'm just throwing this out there, if the cost resulted or had the effect of it being necessary to make it $1,000, that's not going to fly, obviously. And I'm using obviously an exaggerated example. If it becomes cost prohibitive, then that's something for you to debate as to whether or not it's worth doing at that point. At some point, there is a line that can't be crossed. I mean, we would like a net neutral cost to the city, or maybe even, you know, somewhat of a surplus. But if it became cost prohibitive, then you have to debate that and whether or not it's worth it.
Councilwoman Renzulli.
Thank you. I'm sorry if this is a silly question, but do we have any idea right now how many, there's no other license for this type of solicitation, correct? There's hawkers and peddlers, but those are at parades and selling flowers on side of the road and going to fairs and stuff. So we don't really know how many people this affects in order to estimate how much it's going to happen. I don't really understand how we're going to come up with an accurate number to fund it, unless somebody knows something I don't know.
I mean, I would say, and I am probably getting to myself, or it could be totally wrong, is also looking eventually down the line of potential revenue as well, right? That
we don't-
could obviously offset the cost of
Yeah.
whatever expenses that we have, and maybe down the line, again, I'll defer to the sponsors on this, would be, if this falls under the peddler's revenue during the budget year, if not, creating maybe a separate line item within the budget that you could see what the revenue is specifically just for this item, just something worth maybe discussing down the line.
I'm kind of just wondering well, I guess I can call Warwick anyway. I know they do this in Warwick, so what they got for a number of peddlers might help us come up with an idea of how much money we will draw off of it in order to fund implementation. That's all. Thank you.
Member Wall.
Thank you. Just a quick add-on to Councilwoman Renzulli's point. The phrase, "we have no idea who, how many people are operating in the city of Cranston," in itself is kind of glowing that we do need something, some kind of regulation. So that point just, we definitely need.
If there's any further discussion on this, I have one more item to add. No, okay. I know we still have some information, but I think the premise of this, and where it's going, I fully support. We'll get to the fiscal part down the line. But I would like to be added as a co-sponsor if possible through the sponsors on this. Just because, again, as we've been out talking to folks, knocking on doors, this is definitely an item that has been brought up. And so I think it's extremely important, and it's a good way to really be in compliance as to, who's out there and avoid scams and folks. And if the same, just using the example that you provided. We had a woman, I think that came in here, not maybe sometime this year as well. Somebody was knocking on her window, right? And was very, very persistent about it. So I think it's important to have something like this in the books as a city. So, if I may be added, appreciate
Great.
that.
That'd be
Thank
great.
you.
Yep.
Anybody else?
Yes, I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor also, if I could.
All right, great.
Me as well, if I could.
Yep.
I'd like
Anyone
to
else?
commend the sponsors of bringing this forward. I hope it is successful, and I would like to be added as a co-sponsor.
All right. Anyone else? All right. Yeah, no, okay. You're a sponsor, all right. Oil up his elbow a little bit. All right, great. That being said, there's a motion, there was a second. Through the clerk, if you can please take, roll call.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Councilman Wall,
Yes.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli.
Yes.
Councilwoman Haroyan,
Yes,
Councilman Campiano.
Yes.
Council President Reno.
Yes.
Right, great, that passes. Next item, there's no committee business matters carried over. We're moving now to public hearing, and public comment. Is there anyone here in the chamber that would like to speak on docketed items only this evening? No? It is. Yep, you can please come forward, and if you can, please state your name and address for the record. Thank you. We can just make sure the button is pressed, its green button light on. Perfect, thank you.
Hi, my name is Sylvia Lauro, and I'm at 18 Buttonwood Drive. I'm here today because I'm one of the people that has been negatively impacted by a lack of an ordinance around fences and walls. So I first have to thank the sponsors of this, which was the mayor and I think several council members here. So thank you very much. So on July 3rd, I was in my backyard, and this is the view I had of the fireworks that we were watching. On January 9th, this was the same view with 12-foot fence posts being erected for nobody really knew why. There was no letters to neighbors. There was no communication. They just kind of went up really quickly in the afternoon of the 9th. So I have to also thank building inspections because they were very proactive, and somebody did go out that afternoon and halted the project. And had they not actually halted the project, this is what I would have been looking at on July 10th, which would have been essentially 3 billboards in the backyard. So I think it is still pending. And I think the only way I can get these taken down is if this ordinance passes. So hopefully that will happen tonight or this month, because it's already been over 2 months that I've been looking at these things. And I really like my old view back. So if you need these pictures, I'm happy to leave them with anyone if you need them.
I'll make a motion to accept them into the records if that's okay. through the
Second.
chair.
Great, thank you. Motion second. Through the clerk, if we can take a roll call on accepting pictures into the record.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Councilman Wall,
Yes.
Councilman Ferry.
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Haroyan,
yes.
Councilman Campiano.
Yes.
Council President Reno.
Yes.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the chamber that would like to speak before we go into Zoom? Good evening, name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Laro. Oh, Melissa Laro. And the address, and we live at 85 Cypress Drive, which we live right next door to what we have to look at also. So same thing. I don't have any pictures. I came right from work, but Sylvia had given you the pictures. And this is what we also look at also. We're concerned with the values of our homes, you know, and possibly could be a danger. And that's that. To have to look at this every day is not a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Right? Tom, is there anyone think I see a hand up.
Greg Patton?
Good evening. Name and address for the record, please.
Craig Patton, 684 Natick Avenue. I see tonight that there is a matter involving the Conservation Committee and a commission, and I'm not exactly sure what that's about. But I would say from the public standpoint, that commission has not met in a very long time, and that is concerning to those of us who care about our environmental future. So perhaps that might be addressed alongside this particular change to their makeup. I don't know what is inspiring that, but changing a commission's setup that isn't meeting is a little confusing just from the public side. So I would appreciate any clarity that could be provided. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
There is no other public comment.
Great, thank you. That being said, public hearing, public comment, sorry, is now closed. We're gonna move forward now on new matters before the committee. That is 8-24-01, ordinance and amendment of Title 10, Chapter 32, Section 030 of the City of Cranston, 2005, entitled Multi-Way Stop Intersections, enumerated. This is sponsored by Councilman Donegan. The counselor is not here with us this evening. Let me just double check with Council President or the clerk, see if there was any request to continue this or move it as it stands. Just give us 1 second. All right, on the ordinance that we have before us, is there a traffic study that's been provided by any chance?
We haven't received any. I know the traffic engineer has so many days to provide it.
Haven't received it.
No,
All right.
not as yet.
The counselor's not here, so what I'd like to do then is just continue that to next month's ordinance committee meeting. Yep.
Motion to continue.
All right, any discussion? All right, seeing none, so clerk, can we please take a roll call to continue to next month's ordinance meeting?
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Councilor Wall,
Yes.
Councilor Perry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Horoyan,
Yes.
Councilor Campiano.
Yes.
Council President Reno.
Yes.
Great, thank you. The next item on here, we just actually heard a public comment on ordinance. It's 8-24-03, ordinance and the amendment of Title 2, Chapter 52 of the City of Cranston, 2005, entitled Conservation Commission. I want to make a note that it says it's sponsored by me. I haven't sponsored this. So this is kind of surprising to the clerk.
So this is one of those, state law requires only 7 members, has no mention of alternates. So this is why we're just complying with state law. For some
So
reason,
this
at
is one
one
of the
point,
cleanups that the
alternates,
clerk's office is doing to make sure.
at
we're
one point,
compliant with the
alternates were
state.
put on there. I don't know what the reason was. State law does not mention anything about alternates.
Okay. I obviously always tend to defer and I trust the clerk's office, but I just want to double check with our legal counsel. So maybe we should
Just been brought to my attention. I mean, I can research it and get back to you.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'm gonna remove this from tonight, and either, I can either continue this to this month and we get further research, just if we need to be in compliance, we will. And so I'll move it into everyone's okay with it. I know it has my name on it. Councilman Papalaskis.
Yeah, my only question would be, when you do the research, is it a new law that passed, or is it an old? Because I'm the one who put that in to add the alternates. like
Truthfully.
8 years
I-
ago.
I'd be
Could
lying
I-
to you if I said I knew. I honestly don't know. I have to look
Okay.
into it. I don't know.
All right.
I have an email that the city clerk, I believe, sent to the council members explaining this.
I know,
I can read it into the record if you want.
yeah, why don't we continue to next month's meeting?
So,
Just so we can have
apparently-
it clear before we.
While she was doing the research, she found, was created in 1963 with 7 members. In 2017, an ordinance was introduced and passed, which added 2 alternates. However, that is not consistent with Rhode Island General Law 4535-2, which says the commission shall consist of 3 to 7 members. There's no provision for alternates in the law, which has not been changed since 1960. And currently, those 2 alternate positions are vacant, so they're not. filled.
Thank you, Senator Clerk. Council President Marino.
Thank you, Council Vice President Vargas. Just to know, and Rose, I don't know if it was Tracy or you know, who it was that put it on there, how it got on there. There are lots of discrepancies between our code of ordinances and state law, just from changes. And there should never be a unilateral move to put something on the agenda without a council, with a council person's name if they actually did not approve of that sponsorship. Particularly when it didn't even originate with the solicitor's office. So, you know, I'm sure it was just a simple mistake, but that shouldn't be occurring. And for that reason, it should pass. And then the solicitor can engage on the issue and make recommendations to the council with respect to changes. Thanks.
Okay. So we'll just move it forward next month. Okay. I think there was a motion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to give my 2 cents. I have other questions with respect to this ordinance, which, for example, I don't even know if state law requires the mayor make the appointments, or can it be council? So that's why I think it should pass, have the solicitor take a look at it, and then bring it up to council. That's my 2 cents, rather than continue
Yeah.
it.
If somebody did the motion, and we just were trying to say to pass it, or do we need a motion to pass as well?
No, motion to approve.
Second.
Through the clerk, oh, sorry.
I thought we were passing. What are we approving? Motion to approve. Oh, I see. Okay.
Yep.
I think. Not pass the ordinance. Removing it.
I
sorry,
will
we're
withdraw
removing
my
this.
motion.
Yeah.
Because the sponsor can withdraw the ordinance. That's it. So if you're the sponsor and you want to withdraw
Yeah.
it, it's just.
Yep. To withdraw, so I would just want to withdraw this ordinance. So we're gonna do a,
Motion to withdraw the ordinance.
Second.
thank you. All right, any discussion? Through the clerk, please take the roll.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Councilman Wall,
Yes.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilman Haroyan,
Yes.
Councilman Campiano.
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes.
On to the next item, 8-2406, ordinance and amendment of Title 17 zoning of the Code of the City of Cranston 2005 to add Chapter 17-.124 entitled Fences and Walls, sponsored by Mayor Hopkins, Council President Marino, Councilwoman Renzulli, and Councilman Wall. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Discussion?
Through the chair, if I may,
Go
interrupt.
right ahead.
Please. Just before the committee begins to consider and debate this, just something I think is important for you to know. There is a state statute, it's 34-10-20, which is entitled spite fences. And I'm assuming that this ordinance is essentially a a spite fence type of ordinance, which is fine. The only thing I would like to point out is I would suggest this, and this is up to you, obviously. In lines 32 and 33, the sentence which states such structures with heights greater than 6 feet are prohibited. I would suggest amending that line to bring it into compliance with state law, which states the following. It says, a fence or other structure in the nature of a fence which unnecessarily exceeds 6 feet in height. And then it continues on. And the reason for that is because the mere fact that a fence may exceed 6 feet does not necessarily mean it's being erected for malicious or nefarious purposes. Someone may actually have a legitimate reason. Perhaps it's to block a bright light. I don't know. But obviously the state statute took that into consideration. So rather than make it a categorical prohibition over 6 feet, they inserted the word unnecessarily. And I think you might want to consider that here and simply amend that line to say such structures which unnecessarily exceed 6 feet are prohibited. That's for your consideration. Obviously, it's up to you.
Councilwoman Zuli.
Thank you. To the solicitor, I do believe, I understand what you're saying completely because I did look at that statute. But there are other cities and towns that do have this 6 foot, it's pretty standard in Rhode Island, 6 feet. They actually, many cities and towns have 6 feet in the backyard and side yard, but the front yard needs to be 4 or 4.5 feet. I saw that in many places.
Yeah.
We just said 6 feet. I think that, perhaps eventually language could come in that, you could apply if you had a reason to have it over 6 feet. But this, I don't think is specifically, well, the situation that came up in public comment may be a spite fence type of situation. I think categorically, the purpose of this ordinance is to just have consistency across the board to say, we'd like 6 feet fences around. And then if you have a reason that you need a higher fence, we could figure that out after. People need to apply for that. But it is in other cities and towns. I don't know if you need to look into that. I don't know which solicitor took care of this ordinance. It might have been Solicitor Malay. But yes, that in Johnston, I think it's definitely 6 feet
Well,
all around, no spite fence involved.
I understand. And what other cities and towns do, they do, but doesn't necessarily mean they're correct or we're incorrect and vice versa. I'm simply pointing out, it looks like the state had the same concerns, obviously, and the state didn't want a blanket prohibition under every circumstance. The only problem, there's no language in this particular ordinance which carves out any kind of an exception. It just basically says you're going to get cited if you have a fence over 6 feet. That's all. And again, I'm just throwing this out there, for your knowledge, before you debate this. It just seems that if someone really had a legitimate purpose and needed to erect, for instance, a 7 or 8 foot fence for some legitimate purpose, as I said, maybe they live next to a commercial enterprise and the light is bothering them and they want to make sure at night that the light's not penetrating, they'd be in violation of this statute, and they would have to go through the process of, after they're cited, have to go to court, explain why they're doing it. I just don't see a mechanism, unless there is, where someone can apply for an exception or a variance to the requirement. So I think the word unnecessarily, again, just a suggestion. I think it kind of takes care of that. If someone can prove it's necessary, they won't be in violation. The way this is, there's no discretion. It's just you're 6'6" and you got a legitimate reason, you're going to be in violation of the statute. You're going to get cited, pay a fine. That's all.
I would personally rather amend this to say that you need to get some kind of a permit if you want a fence over 6 feet than to That's just my opinion. Everybody can obviously say theirs, but I just don't think that this was really meant for spite fences specifically, just for in general, to have some kind of uniformity, because we have nothing on the books now. Where if somebody needs something bigger, then they can, buildings can go out there and assess that. I don't, and you know what I mean? Like, so if you want a bit, that's how in Providence, at least, they have it that way. It needs to be a 6-foot fence, but if you want anything over 6 feet, you have to apply for a special permit. That might be an easier way. I don't, like Council President Moreno usually has good suggestions on these things as a lawyer. So thank you.
Councilmember Campoviano.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, what we witnessed in these pictures is absolutely ludicrous. I mean, it's actually dangerous. If it's a hurricane, these things are gonna go right through these people's window. But to the solicitor's point, there may be a legitimate reason and a benign reason to have something that's over 6 feet. Let's say the contour of the land is in such a way that it needs to be higher in one area than another. So there should be something in here that would account for that. So, I mean, obviously, I always thought you couldn't do anything over 6 feet anyway, but that's crazy. So I do agree that we need to put something in here to account for something as benign as that, of the level of the land or whatever, so.
Councilman Ferry.
I'm in the favor of the wording that the solicitor wants to use, and I'll give you a quick example. I have a 6-foot fence, and I have a dog that used to jump over the 6-foot fence, and I added a piece of lattice that was 10 inches. So I would have had to go get a permit to put that 10 inches of lattice up, which would be ridiculous, because it actually looks better than the fence. So I kind of agree with what he's saying, just to make it in case it happens.
I might add, that the word unnecessarily, I think, is a good word, because what it's going to do is this: rather than put the onus on the property owner to go through some kind of permitting process or come to City Hall to seek a permit or contact inspections, the way it would work, I think, is this: they receive a complaint that someone's got a 7-foot fence, or there's a section of the fence that exceeds 6 feet. Okay, building inspector goes out, code enforcement goes out. Is there a reason why your fence is over 6 feet? The property owner may have a very legitimate reason. The building inspector or the zoning official is satisfied, no ticket is issued, and it just saves the property owner, who may be innocent, of going through this whole rigmarole of coming to City Hall and trying to justify and obtain a permit. So that's why what this does is, I think it gives some discretion to code enforcement, which I think is what we want. That's their job. They're supposed to go out there and, view these places to see if they're in compliance. If someone's got a legitimate reason and they satisfy code enforcement, fine. If they don't and they're issued the ticket, then it comes to court or wherever, and it's dealt with then. My own opinion, I think the state had that word in there for a reason. I think they recognized we've got to put some type of limitation. We just can't have a blanket prohibition. That just is, again, I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I'm just making the suggestion because I did research it and saw it in the state statute.
Councilmember.
Thank you. The issue that was described by the constituents who approached and gave testimony was a catalyst to something happen in July. This goes back to July, I believe. I got my first call or text or email regarding the situation. And the pictures that were described would be the catalyst. But the catalyst to action that happened that day, I called Solicitor Millay and I asked, how big can fences be? Just a simple question. And do we have an ordinance? And after some time, we got the answer that there's no ordinance at all, which it really surprised me, because I do know other communities do have, pretty much blanket, 6-foot levels. And given the residential areas that I'm thinking of, I'm not thinking of industrial areas or anything like that. I'm thinking of Glen Hills. I'm thinking of Garden City. And these are just residential areas that I believed, and I may disagree with my colleague across the, I believe 6 foot is high enough. And we have to have, I believe we have to have a number, you know, that there has to be, if it's 6, 6.5, it has to be a clear, it's not ambiguous. I think it's a fair limit. It gives you privacy. However, it maintains that aesthetic quality of the neighborhood. I mean, I might be open to something if there was some type of variance, but I think it'd have to be clear, some clear language. And I know this ordinance came up, I believe it was Solicitor Malay. I can't speak for him who came up with it. Clear language on what the process is, so that not anyone could just say, well, I'd like a 7-foot fence. No, I'd like an 8-foot fence. And that goes right back to the catalyst of this issue. So personally, you know, I'm in favor of it as it's written, but I understand the legal, I'm not a lawyer.
Just to be clear, Councilman Wall, this, by adding the word unnecessarily, you're not changing what the ordinance or the state statute says. 6 feet is the boundary line. There's no question about that. That is the maximum height. The only purpose of putting in that description of unnecessarily is just to allow a safety valve, sort of, for people who legitimately are not trying to violate either the state law or the ordinance. 6 feet is the standard, no question about it. All unnecessarily is saying, look, for the innocent person out there who's not doing this for any nefarious purpose, it's okay. Now, obviously, if someone puts up a 10-foot fence, they're going to be in clear violation. But make no mistake about it, it's not changing the height requirement. The height requirement is 6 feet. All we're saying is, all the state law is saying is, it cannot be unnecessarily in excess of 6 feet.
Thank you, Council President Marino.
Thank you. I agree with the solicitor. It's not the first time it's come up, being on council, where I may want a certain type of stronger language, but unfortunately adherence to, you know, the recommendation of the solicitor in terms of a competing general law statute tells a different perspective on this. And so for that reason, I would be in favor of amending it this evening so that on line 32, it would read, such structures which unnecessarily exceeds 6 feet are prohibited. Going into line 30. That's what I would recommend this evening, because it still satisfies the purpose of this ordinance, which is that we are only allowing 6-foot fences. And then if it's beyond that, we're simply saying you have to comply with state law. And we're obligated to do that legally. I'm not comfortable doing anything other than what is prescribed by law.
And Madam President, that's a good point. But what it does is it shifts the burden now to the property owner. You have to justify it.
Absolutely.
And just. I'll keep my
So
answer.
just to be clear, if somebody builds the rustic drive-in screen next door to you, they are breaking the law. Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
But if they have poles with lights, that's fine. If they have lights, if this is just strictly a fence.
Right. I mean, I believe we have other ordinances which deal with noise, deal with light pollution. There are other
Motion that needs to be done.
I'll make a motion then to amend lines 32 and 33 so that it reads such structures, and then we strike with heights greater than 6 feet are, and instead we insert after the word structures on line 32 going into line 33, which unnecessarily exceed 6 feet are prohibited, period.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Councilwoman Renzulli?
Thank you. Attorney Verdecchio, may I just ask you another question? Just in that spite fence law from the state, doesn't it can you explain if my understanding is correct, that if someone does erect a fence higher than 6 feet, that might be considered maliciously erected or unnecessary, that it becomes, it's categorized as a private nuisance, and then it's almost like a civil an issue, so we're not going to have that. So how does that play into it? Because that's what my concern is, that it's because of a private, it's not saying someone could essentially do it and then they'd have to go be civilly sued, correct? Am I correct in that understanding?
Well, if I'm understanding your question, we've run up against this fairly frequently where we have an intersection of what the town and the city is responsible for and what the property owner is responsible to do. I've used the term, we can't be the law firm for 80,000 people. We can't go out and vindicate everybody's property rights. At some point, if they feel that someone else is interfering with the enjoyable use of their property, they have access to the courts. And this spite fence statute 341020, you're correct. It creates a private cause of action for the property owner to go to Superior Court. So the question becomes, where do we draw the line? Where does it become the city's responsibility versus the property owner's responsibility to take action on their own? And like I said before, and I don't mean this flippantly at all, but we just can't be the law firm for every person who has a complaint against their neighbor. That's why I think the state enacted this law, and there's some case law on this. There's actually more cases than I would have thought where people have gone to court over this issue. So I'm not quite sure what your question was. If your question is, you're correct that the state law does create a private nuisance action. What we're doing, unfortunately, we can't go vindicate. We can't charge someone with a nuisance. We have an $85 ticket if you're in violation of an ordinance, but that's not going to solve their problem either. If they, you know what I'm saying? I mean, there's only so much we can do as a city when it comes to competing property interests and arguments between neighbors. There's only so far that we can go.
Your opinion, by putting in the word unnecessarily, that allows people, like in the example that Councilman Ferry said, to go higher than 6 feet, and unless it's bothering a neighbor, that's essentially okay. Where instead of like in Providence, where it's, if you want to go above 6 feet, we're going to proactively come out and see if that's okay by applying for a permit. So we're being reactive versus proactive.
Well, I think that's really up to the committee, how you want to approach it. I'm merely suggesting that by adding this limitation, the amendment that President Marino just introduced, what you're doing is you're basically saying 6 feet is the limit. If we get a complaint that you've got 8 feet, an inspector's going out, if you don't have a legitimate purpose, you're getting cited, you're in violation. But that's as far as we can take it. It's not going to solve their problem unless we get an order from the municipal court to tear down the fence or, something like that. What Providence does, truthfully, I don't know, and frankly, I don't care what Providence does. The fact that some other municipality may be doing something unconstitutional or violating the law doesn't justify us doing the same thing.
Yeah, no.
And I'm not suggesting they're doing that. I'm just saying in general. I'm never really persuaded by what other communities are doing, because Barrington had a flavored tobacco ban, or I forget exactly what it was, some type of liquor ban, and they enacted it. It was their ordinance. It got overturned. It was unconstitutional.
Yeah.
So if we had emulated them, we'd be in the same predicament. We'd be
Yeah.
getting sued and
Yeah,
we'd be
that's
in,
not my
we'd be in trouble.
suggestion, Mr. Radek. My suggestion, that's not what I am suggesting, that we emulate a unconstitutional, or that is fantastic. It's just if we're a lot of times we're reactive instead of proactive, and that's where we get into trouble, because if someone doesn't think that they are doing something that's unnecessary, because it's kind of subjective, but if they applied first, they'd be told, you can't do that, then they wouldn't do it, and then they wouldn't get a fine. So we could Do you understand what I'm?
I
I'm
do,
saying?
I do know what you mean, but there's always going to be some degree of subjective judgment in these kinds of situations. If not, you're just gonna have a bright line, no exceptions. We don't want to hear it. You're 6'1", you're getting fined.
But you would know in
I think that's
advance.
problematic because I think the city could be on the receiving end of a lawsuit saying that that's unreasonable, and they may be right.
But wouldn't you know in advance? You'd be able to fight that then. If you went to go apply to make your fence 8 feet and they said, no, you can't do that because it's not necessary, then you would either fight it at that, you wouldn't already have it up and be getting fined.
Yeah, well, there's different ways of doing it. There's no question. You could do it any way you like. I'm simply suggesting by putting in that one word, you're shifting the burden over to the person who's in excess of 6 feet, and you're avoiding a long drawn out process that the person has to go through. And this is a judgment call on your part. This is completely up to the committee, how you want to approach it.
Personally, I'd rather talk to buildings and see if that other way it would be burdensome to them. So I'm not in favor of this specific change, but obviously I sponsored the ordinance, so I do want something to pass concerning 6-foot fences. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So there was a motion. There was a second. I believe we already need to now. To the clerk, who can take the roll, please.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Councilman Wall,
Yes.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mazzulli,
No,
Councilwoman Horayan,
Yes.
Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Council President Reno.
Yes.
So that's the motion. Now we're gonna vote the actual ordinance now with that amendment included. To the clerk, can you please take a, I'm sorry, a motion. I
Motion to
need a
approve
motion,
the
please.
amended motion,
Need a second?
amended ordinance.
Second.
None? All right. To the clerk, can you please take a roll call?
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Councilman Wall,
Yes.
Councilman Ferry.
Yes.
Councilwoman Mazzulli,
yes.
Councilwoman Horayan,
Yes.
Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Council President Reno.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. All right, on to the next item. There's a resolution creating a subcommittee on homeless. This is sponsored by Council President Marino.
Thank you to the chair. This resolution is to establish a subcommittee on the issue of the homeless encampments to address this. I do want to make mention that in terms of the appointment from someone from the majority party on council, someone from the minority member of council, that is to be presumed to be made by the majority leader and the minority leader. That seems reasonable. That's the only thing. And I don't know that if we need to amend it or we can just, conduct ourselves in that way. It's a minor thing. So hopefully this will be helpful to the issue because it's a long-term issue and it's not an easy task. And having the people who are with the actual experience on a regular basis of interactions with this and public safety and compassion is the best way to address it. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Question on this resolution? No? All right. So there's a motion, there's a second. Thank you. Yeah,
Motion to approve.
Second.
any discussion on the resolution? Nope. I just want to thank the council president for bringing this to obviously the forefront after the conversation that we've had in the last few weeks on this issue. That being said, to the clerk, can you please take a roll call?
Council Vice President Vargas.
Yes.
Councilman Wall,
Yes.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mazzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Horayan, Councilman Campiano.
Yes.
Council President Reno.
Yes.
All right, seeing there's no other business, there motion to.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, I have a meeting adjourned.
Wow.